so much for coming to what really is the main event of Feinberg's first annual celebration of Open Access Week. We're going to have speaking for us tonight Dr. Joel Parker of the biology department on campus. Joel is an associate professor in the biology department. He has been here for 4 years. Prior to that, he did his doctorate at Arizona State and did a postdoctorate in Switzerland at the University of Lausanne, and finally spent 6 years at the University of Southampton in England before coming to Plattsburgh. Joel's going to be speaking to us tonight about advice for beginners on how to use student Wikipedia page editing in a science class. And I'd also like to mention that we are doing a series of webinars actually through SUNY's celebration of Open Access Week, and tomorrow's is, like tonight's talk. Interested in Joel's topic tonight, you might want to come to our lecture, to that webinar tomorrow. We have flyers out at the front of the room, and it's
people at WikiEdu for egging me on and supporting me through all this. So I went through many titles trying to figure out what to call this talk, and it ended up being advice for beginners. Really, it's advice from a beginner. So I've not been doing Wikipedia. I'm not an expert at editing on Wikipedia, and I've not been doing Wikipedia in a big way. I have friends who actually have entire courses built around it. So this is basically what I'm trying to tell you today is why I do it, and how to sort of how I went about sticking my toe into the water and trying some very simple assignments, and what to think about and how to go about getting started. So really, this is kind of a pep talk to get you all writing on Wikipedia, or getting your students writing on Wikipedia. All right. So oops. There we go. So basically, let's give a little outline of where we're going today. So first, I'm going to talk about why. And I think it's really important to think about why because of the nature of Wikipedia and understanding why I'm using it for a 4th year advanced science class. So this is our required senior year cell biology class. And it's there's a really important sort of aspect to that we're getting students ready to graduate. And if you understand, I think, how university education and Wikipedia's objectives sort of mesh together, I'm going to admit I'm going to get a little bit philosophical and get really deep here for a bit. But you think you'll see how it connects and why it's important. Then I'm going to show you about getting started doing it. And the big take-home lesson that people don't recognize is just how much support there is. Wikipedia is desperate to get people to work on these articles and fix them, and they figured out students are the way to go. So they have an infrastructure that I don't think most people who've not explored it just do not appreciate. I have people looking after me, watching me in my classes. When you start setting up a class, you're going to interact with someone who's going to give you advice, who's going to hold your hand all the way through. You'll get far more support with them than you usually get at university. Okay, and they also have software in place that makes Moodle and Blackboard. It's really complicated. Theirs is simple and easy to use. Maybe because it's less, it does less, but it's there and it's in place, and it's amazing the level of support you get. And we'll give you some practical advice about getting started, and take some sort of pitfalls I ran into. And then I want to talk about some of the fears, the pitfalls and surprises that when I talk to my colleagues seem to be really worried about. And I was worried about them at first too. And there are some legitimate things you have to think about if you're going to be putting students out there on the internet exposed to the public. So we're going to talk about a few of those issues too, and how I've dealt with them. But also there's a really good side to it too that I'm going to hit at the end here. So first of all, I'm going to just go absolutely to the basic core definition of what a university is. I know we're all told we're supposed to be working for getting our students jobs, or we're supposed to be curing diseases, or improving the economy, but this is what we are about. Universities are about discovery. That is our #1 goal. It's what the faculty are here for. It's probably one of the best kept secrets. But basically we help students discover themselves as they mature. It's teaching students about how the world works. But most importantly is this third one. It's faculty working with students to make novel discoveries about the world. So we're trying to learn about the world. And when I say discovery, it's uncovering. And what's being uncovered is necessarily the truth. And that's sort of the overriding concept you have to keep in account even when you're working with Wikipedia. But part of this in science and in all academia is this working together is it has to be, it's a social and team activity. And this is something we don't usually teach our students. Sure, we'll put them in group work and say, okay, you have to work together. But I don't think, where do we actually get a chance to show them that if you're going to participate in moving a discipline forward or discovery, it is a team activity. You have to interact with others. And I just make the argument that basically no discovery is really complete until you've put it out there. And indeed, if you actually look at the, how we're evaluated in terms of what is a definition of a scholarly contribution, it's teaching others about it. You can't just, science is one of those subjects where if a tree falls down in the woods and no one hears it, you wonder, did it fall? In science, no, it didn't. Okay, that's basically the bottom line. If you don't put it out there, if you don't publish it, then it doesn't count. So, it has to go out. And you think about what you're doing with your students in class when they're writing essays or doing assignments, it's not getting out. Okay? So, basically then, oops, wrong way. Get my little mouse to work. So basically what I want to argue is that the highest outcome, learning outcome we should strive for is to make our students contributors. We want them to turn them from just studying a subject and taking information in to going out into the world and becoming contributors. And this word contribution, I think, is absolutely essential whenever you're thinking about doing one of these Wikipedia articles, because it's all about contributing and making the article better. You aren't thinking about grabbing subjects to help achieve your student, well, you do achieve student learning outcomes, but the guideline has to be built around contribution. And it's an authentic exercise in the classic teaching parlance definition of the word. But what I want to emphasize is that this teaches the process. And this is something that I think you may be thinking it's just a writing exercise. I think it actually is more than that, because it's actually teaching sort of the discovery process in a very real way. So discovery, basically you start off, you identify something's missing or wrong. You have to find something wrong with the world. We all know that rebels tend to be the discoverers, because you have to sort of rebel against reality. You have to think of a solution. Then you have to actually execute the solution and do something to prove it's right. Finally, you have to contribute the solution to the community. With the simple Wikipedia assignments that I've been doing, boom, there. We do all that. The students actually do each step of that discovery process. So they start off evaluating and picking an article at it. So they have to go and find a mistake. They have to find a flaw in the system. They have to see where is the hole, what needs to be fixed. Okay, where is it biased? Does it have, is it good citations in it? Something's missing. Then they come up with their solution. They have to edit the article, they have to think about, okay, how am I going to pull all these things together in this genuine synthetic writing exercise? So they have to take multiple sources, combine them, figure out how to fix it. But most importantly, and this is where it differs, I think, from the usual assignment, is now they have to contribute the solution to the community. So they have to take this last step that we as scientists and as scholars know this is a brutal one, right? The hard part. So this is, and they have to take it and they have to publish it. And when it comes to putting something out online on Wikipedia, there are talk pages, so you have to deal with peer review of various quality. There are robots that will scan the students and sometimes they'll automatically revert them. There are people who are English majors or have degrees in English who'll be looking at cell biology pages because they're in charge of a certain number of pages for Wikipedia, and they will be looking at it and not necessarily understanding what is going on, and just based on the style, try to undo it. So there's a lot of policing going on. And when that happens, the key is you have to learn how to interact with these people. Okay, and this means you have to be rational, you got to be polite, you have to be careful and recognize that when you go and mess with someone else's page, you can't just criticize and say, oh, this is stupid, because a real human being is responsible for that writing, and they will be watching that site. And when they see you criticizing them, you have to be civil, so you have to learn what graduate students learn when they review papers. You always think, okay, you get a paper reviewed and it comes back, and you can tell when you read it that this reviewer is a complete idiot, And your first thing you think is, in your review, you realize that if you get someone like that, the trick is not to just say this reviewer was an idiot. The trick is to rewrite it in such a way that the idiot can understand it. You know, that's the secret. And we have to think about how to deal, how do you deal with this sort of, get the students actually interacting and defending themselves in the right way. Now I want to show you basically something about the kind of impact and contribution I'm talking about. So this is the first year I did it. And I just did a very simple little assignment where we just tweaked a few sentences and they had to do a citation. And so there's this tipping my toe in the water. Second year, had to do a few more. So the number I want to point out here are these article views. Okay, so we've had almost 500,000 article views on 2 classes, totaling, 48 students. We're averaging about 10,000 page views per student. They know that. Yeah, that is, think about that. That's kind of a, if you've ever been an amateur blogger, most of them will practically throw a party when you get 10,000 page views. We can just, this isn't particularly impressive from some of the other things, other pages I've seen. So I really want to get my first class over 1 million one of these days. All right? So people are looking at this. So it is a contribution. Now, I want to show you the scale of what some students have done. This is, I'm going to start off with sort of a superstar. So this student basically, sometimes they get kind of carried away. So I'm going to do let's see if we can get here and just show you what kind of work you can get out of them. So one thing about Wikipedia is you can go back and you can look at these history pages and you can go down here and you can see every single highlight of what the student did. So you have this really nice record of everything they do. That can be a good and a bad thing. So we have this nice record. I can come down here, and this is basically where the page was when we started working on it last year. It's on unicellular organisms. And it just had this little paragraph and I think some citations. So it wasn't that bad. So that's what it looked like when he started working on it. Go back here to, is this one? Nope. Wrong one, hang on a minute. Yeah, so we come back and look at this one after he got done working on it. So he got a little bit carried away, but after the page is done, he had that section. Then he put an evolutionary hypothesis in there, did a section on prokaryotes, added bacteria, put in a figure, archaea, nice, going through Wikipedia, picking these things out. And he basically kind of, every now and then, this is interesting, I've seen this when I've assigned student blogs too, there's a certain subset of students that just, as soon as there's something about doing it in reality and making it authentic, that just suddenly they just go nuts. And they'll be complete overachievers, which is what this one did. So, yeah, it's been since then, this is what it was as of the last day of the assignment. So that was after his last edit. Since then, a lot of people have come in and tweaked it and played with it. So more standard one was perhaps this student's who pretty much kept to more of the assignment and just changed a little bit. But what was interesting about this one is with this adaptive response in these 4 genes is she got really, really excited when she started tweaking it. And she got, on the top page, a professor from Max Planck who helped discover some of these disease genes contacted her. So she's sitting there talking to someone in Germany about how to edit this. So here I am in a situation where how am I going to grade something when she has someone, an expert, who's way over my head, she's working with on it. Okay, so this is the kind of thing that can happen. And afterwards, it wasn't that big. There were some flaws. So when we got down here to her, when she finally got done, some of the citations were duplicated. All these have been fixed now by people who came along afterwards. But it starts a little snowball effect sometimes, I find. So let's, what we need to do it. Okay? So, main thing, these are basically the main things you have to think about. Number one is you need training. Okay? You just cannot jump into it and think this is an easy thing. I'm just going to tell my students this science to change some pages on Wikipedia. There is stuff you have to know. So when I did it, basically it was over summer break. I said, okay, I'm going to do it. So I just sat down and did some of the training exercises and kind of felt my way through it. Decided, oh, wow, this is really cool, and then went ahead and did it. So the main thing is just to get in there and start doing some of the information stuff I'm going to show you in a second. The other thing is your students are going to need training. So you have to be careful about scheduling the timing. Because they're going to have to be part of the assignment and part of the grades are going to be going through certain training modules. You also have to think about the assignment type. I'll go over some of the types of assignments you can do. And they're set time periods that Wikipedia, since they've been doing this for so long, they know how long some of these assignments are, and they'll have templates. So they'll have it worked out for you that you just sort of plug into. Be aware of privacy issues, which is the big thing that always scares everybody. And I think you need to, if you wonder how students perceive it, they love it. And I'll explain to you why I think that is in a minute. So for the training, first thing to do is you need to know what Wikipedia is. Okay, it's an encyclopedia. That means there's a specific style of writing. It's not like writing a scholarly paper, in a sense. You have to know that it's an online encyclopedia. There is a neutral point of view. Okay, you can't be biased, which can be kind of difficult. That aspect of it means it has to be established knowledge. So, sort of paradoxically, where we might be telling our advanced science students, oh, reference primary literature, you have to tell them, no, reference review papers. Wikipedia loves review papers because this is an encyclopedia. Okay, it has to be stuff that's completely non-controversial. It's free content. I heard someone over here before I started talking about copyright. You have to really pay close attention to copyright. They watch it like a hawk. So you have to go through, and there's a training module on plagiarism and copyright that's really good at Wikipedia. They also tell you should interact with each other in a really fair, nice way. And this is something you really got to emphasize to the students, is point out to them, you know, you're going to be dealing with people outside the class. In some cases, two students will do the same article, and they have to work with and against each other. They can be scooping each other. So all these sort of politics come into play. It says they don't have firm rules, but as soon as you break them, you find out about it. So I'm not sure I believe the fifth pillar there. But let me just show you the training you get. So this is the web page for the training. I don't want to scare you too much, but all of these little things, they're shorter and easier than We Comply. All right, if you know what that is. And much more fun. All right, so these are like little 5-minute tidbits, okay? Some of them are videos, some of them have little things, but you can get started. It talks about doing the editing source. Right now, the editing is so easy that you hardly need a little bit of it, but not too much. But it goes through some of the basics of it, warns you off medical topics, which I'll talk about in just a second, how to set up the classroom. I'm going to go into this a bit about setting up your dashboard. But there's all these, you know, some of these come in handouts, but a lot of them are just, you know, just go in, click on it, and you can start looking at that before you decide. I decided I better go look at the training before I committed to doing it. So basically, I just sat down and started going through the training modules to learn more about it. And you know, oh, this is actually easy. You know, it's not that bad at all. But you really do need to go through that in order to see what's going on. So here's the thing to keep in mind. They've been doing this for enough years now that they know what they're doing. So when you go to set up an assignment and you pick an assignment type, like you're going to critique an article, they'll give you a template and a reasonable timeline, maybe 3 or 4 weeks. And you should probably take that timeline into account. And some of the things you might do is have the students, they have to get a username, so they have to sign up to Wikipedia. They'll have to you set up which training modules they're going to take. And you set it up on a timeline, and they have all these nice timeline critiques, you know, all these nice patterns set up, or the system set up. So they'll be critiquing, you can edit or add to an article, which is what I do. Translation, I have not looked into that at all, but for foreign language classes, I could imagine that this might be a really cool assignment. Copy editing, adding graphics. So I also put in, I kind of combine adding, I usually just point the students toward articles that need pictures. Because scientists like pictures. We sort of don't, you know, it helps. We need the pictures. Cell biology, pretty much the definition of knowing something is drawing a cartoon of it. So we have to have the graphics. You can add an article. Adding an article now is hard. Wikipedia doesn't want people just adding articles willy-nilly. So you have to kind of keep an eye on your students. And this semester we had one accidentally add an article when she first started. And we're debating whether we're going to keep it or not now. So we may, but it's going to be an interesting back and forth with the talk page in the community to see if they let it. The other thing It's like I said, I have a friend a colleague at University of Washington who teaches an entire behavioral ecology class. This is Joan Strassman, and she does it completely with Wikipedia. So they start off in the beginning, they work on the behavioral side of particular animals, and each student, they set them up in teams, and they go from finding in articles and editing them to trying to push them up to make them better. And the whole semester is dedicated and built around a Wikipedia assignment. So you can dive into it to that extent. I wasn't going to start off doing that. That scared me. So what I do is I just have an assignment that sort of runs in the background with a lot of other things. But it's turned out, and I really think it is a core assignment now to what the whole purpose of what I think a fourth year advanced science class should be. The other thing is you're going to get people with names. Helene Blumenthal, oh, thank you. She is my sort of the person who sort of shepherds me. And you get more support. I'm absolutely serious. I think I've gotten more support with specific assignments with Wikipedia than you get at any university I've worked at. Okay, they are there. They are fast. Like I said, I had to wait a whole 53 minutes last week. That was like a long wait. They're faster than the university IT people. I think it's because it's a smaller system. But if something breaks, you just send them an email, and yesterday I had a problem fixed within 13 minutes. I timed it. Okay, so they're very, very, very helpful, and it's people. It's not like you're talking to robots. You know, you're actually talking to people. So when I was setting up the class, they said, well, you know, take a look at this, and if you do something wrong, they'll send you a note. You know, you'll interact with it, and you get all the support and hand-holding. It's really amazing. Let's go over here. Yeah, the dashboard. So this is sort of the place where you run your class from. And I really wanted to walk through this a little bit. Basically, it's easier to set up the Moodle or Blackboard because I think it's simpler. There's less things it has to do. So you can learn it very, very quickly. And it provides a template and backbone for structuring your assignments so that it works. Let me just go through mine. I'm not logged in. Good. Okay. This is about privacy. So anybody in the public can go to your dashboard and look at this stuff. All right. So let's just start with, this is just showing what we're doing this week. We're on week 5. So I'm going to start with the timeline because that sort of shows you the guts of this. So it's set up in blocks 1 week at a time. So you set up a block, you say what the assignment is, when the due date is, how many points, and you can describe it. And I ran mine, this is running for 9 weeks, which is probably obnoxiously long for editing or adding a paragraph to an article. So this time I'm adding a paragraph and I think a minimum of 3 citations. So we have this all broken out, but you may notice on week 1, it has the essentials, the 3 training modules the students have to do. That took them all 15 minutes to do all 3. And they were saying, yeah, it was easy, you know, For week 2, when they actually start working on it, I want to point out this module in particular is excellent. This plagiarism module, one which talks about the 3 types of plagiarism. And the nice thing is, once they've done it, it's documented, they've taken it. It's interesting, I've never had a plagiarism problem with Wikipedia yet. And I attributed that to 2 reasons. 1 is it's documented. 2, where did students plagiarize from? Wikipedia. You know, I think that may have 90% of it right there. I think they also believe that Wikipedia has a magic plagiarism checker, copyright checker, which they may do. When you see how many pages get scanned with robots all the time and reverted for various reasons. But the other thing I wanted to show you is this. So I'm not breaking any FERPA regulations. These are just usernames. So students can be anonymous or not. Some you can probably guess who they are. But what's nice is you have the articles they're looking at. You see the ones who pick the ones they're going to actually be working on, and some who sort of hesitant. But you can see what they've written. You can go over and check out what they've edited. So if I click on here, you get all their various, you can see when they completed, dates and times, timestamps on all the modules they've done. Then you come down here to the user contributions. You can see the pages they're working on. Right now they're staying in what's called their sandbox. The public can see these, but what's nice about a sandbox is it's not something that's indexed on a search engine. So you can work on an article in your sandbox without people looking at the article knowing you're working on it necessarily. On the other hand, if someone knows your username, their mother could come in and watch what they're doing, because this is still public, and we'll talk about that in a second. But you see how everything's just documented, so you just go through and see systematically how they did everything. So it's really good for keeping an eye on people. All right? And like I said, setting this up, it's trivial. It is so much easier than setting up a Moodle page from scratch. I mean, I set up a Moodle page when I first got here, and I think ever since then I just made a copy of it because it was so painful. I did the same thing with Blackboard, I think, when I was in the UK, where they had that. It's just, it's much, much easier. So if we go to student training, so basically, with the student training, just make the training part of the graded exercise. So you assign points to it if they get it done by a certain date. And that way, they get it done, and you can be watching them all the way through. I didn't show it on the dashboard, but on the dashboard it showed you like 3 out of 8, 5 out of 8, 8 out of 8, whatever, how many assigned 8 modules they're supposed to have done by now. And it tells you how many they've done out of what's assigned. So you can watch it and make sure they do it. And like I said, with plagiarism, the copyright module is a really good one, and the plagiarism module, they hit the 3 different types of plagiarism really clearly, and they have to document it that they passed it. I'm going to have to figure out how to does that work. There we go. So here's some of the questions that sort of come up. One thing I was sort of anxious about was if I'm going to have them do articles, which articles are they going to do? Because you search Wikipedia, you always go to these big articles usually because you're looking for big things to get started with, and they're pretty well done. Are there enough damaged articles out there? And the answer is absolutely yes. And the way you find them is all you have to do, and I encourage you, if you want to see what kind of articles you have, enter your subject area. In our case, it was cell biology. Put stubs after that in a Google search, and you'll find out, you'll get a Wikipedia page that says cell biology stubs. Stubs are little articles that need help, or little subjects that need help. And they're great starting places. So like there's 200 and some odd cell biology stubs. I think there's 1,000 chemistry stubs, biochemistry stubs. Of all these articles that need help, some of them are beyond help. I mean, there may be little subjects that shouldn't even be considered a page, but a lot of them are things that need work. The other thing is Wikipedia's been flagging articles now, if you watch it, that say, okay, we need more citations, no inline citations. And you encourage us, I started right from the beginning telling the students as they're, as we're going through class, to be watching Wikipedia. If they find one that has a mistake, if they find some that are screwed up, put those down. Even when I'm lecturing, if I come across a good one, I'll tell the class, this might make a good Wikipedia article, write it down and go take a look. And we've never really there's always a few students who have trouble getting articles, but there's always a few students who have trouble doing anything. You're always going to have one or two that you kind of have to handhold through. But they're out there, and they'll find them. One thing that as an instructor you need to keep in mind is to avoid good articles. And they'll tell you about this in the training. The point is contribution. And this is why I was hitting that at the beginning. You don't think, okay, I have this material I have to teach in this semester. You're going to do this subject, you're going to do that article, you're going to do that. That's not the way you structure a Wikipedia writing assignment. You have to think, okay, where are you're contributing? The goal of, I think, of a Wikipedia writing article and sole power with students comes from being authentic and being a contribution. So this is why I like doing it with an advanced class. I don't think I would do Wikipedia with a first or second year class. And the people at Wikipedia may get mad at me for saying that, but I think it's a perfect assignment for an advanced class where the students actually have gotten a body of knowledge that now they can go out and apply and make a difference, make it better. So focus on contribution. The other thing is you're here in the training to avoid medical articles, and for us that's kind of a big deal because my class is full of pre-meds. And I have to tell them, you don't have your white coat yet. There's people online who are desperate, and they're desperate for relatives and for themselves, looking for anything, and you have to be very, very careful to avoid medical articles. And if it is medical, you have to make sure it's super neutral and super, they tell you to be really careful and basically try to warn you off of it. So it may not be relevant for people in other branches, but in cell biology, I run into that every time. I always have one or two that do it, and I keep a real close eye on them, just to make sure that they aren't, selling snake oil or anything. So here's the #1 problem that scares everybody off, and I was terrified by, and that's the lack of privacy. Everything is done in full view of the World Wide Web. How do you deal with FERPA and grades with an assignment where the student's assignment and work is coming in and being done and improved, and they're making mistakes, and they're getting feedback and being assessed, but it's out there where everybody can see it, okay? And that, basically, the way I deal with it, and I think the way most people I've talked to deal with it, is I tell them to communicate with each other, communicate with the world, but when it comes to my feedback, I do it via university email to keep it private. So their mother can see, your grammar isn't so great there, but she's not going to see that I'm going to give you a B because your grammar isn't that great. So I keep that separate. So I keep all this email, and I try to avoid giving them any kind of advice on their talk pages where they're getting it from everyone else. And I make it very clear to them too that that's an exception to the rule. Normally they should be working with everyone else. And I think the way to think about this is this is like I look at it more like an internship than in-class assignment. We send students out for experiential learning to go shadow doctors. They're out there in the public. Their screw-ups are in front of everybody. You send them to a company to work, their screw-ups are in front of everybody. What they're doing good is in front of everybody. But it's that kind of assignment. They are working publicly. The other thing that's really important, and I would never do this if Wikipedia was working like Facebook or Google, is Wikipedia understands the need for anonymity. Okay, online there's a very good reasons for being anonymous, and since Wikipedia doesn't have a financial interest in selling your information, they're okay with it. But some reasons, domestic abuse, maybe someone has a stalker, there's classes of people who get targeted, and it's really important that the students, and we have foreign students coming from other countries that aren't so open. If I could not do this assignment without giving them the opportunity to be anonymous, I would not do this assignment. Okay, we just can't reveal their names out there and let them expose it. So I give them the choice. They make up their usernames, but they just have to tell me what their usernames are. So if I scroll down that list, you'd have seen someone, I think it's Demo E. Who's Demo E? They pick aliases that won't be exposed online. And you have to explain, I always explain this to them right up front, that okay, you can be anonymous, they don't require you to use real names, and just have to tell me your name, and to think through whether they can do that or not. And this is the other thing you have to be careful about, is it is a public assignment. And Wikipedia keeps track through the history of every single edit. When they hit that save change, it goes on there, even in their sandbox or when they make comments. So when you're having these interactions, it's all being documented. All right? And they need to know that. And one of the first things I do, actually, is I will take them I'll show them what the dashboard looks like to the public, not log in, and say, see, I can scan down here. See, I can go over here and click on you, and look at what she's been doing, talking, you can see everything. Oh, they can see the sandbox too. Yes, they can see the sandbox too if you hit save changes, and it's recorded. All right? It will record plagiarism. So you want to document yourself as being plagiarized. I think this is another reason that stops plagiarism from happening, is if you get caught here, it's a permanent record on display for everybody forever. Okay, so that's something to think about, of not just comments. So you have to be careful with, you can't, be nasty. It puts this nice time, date, stamp, username right on it. So it's all documented. So you need to watch where they're doing it. So to mitigate this risk, what general the practice is, and I got this from Straussman, but I think it may be in the training, is I put students into small groups. What I used to do was we'd have groups of 3. We'd have a designated proofreader, a designated fact checker, and a Wikipedia expert. So it'd be someone who's responsible for learning the HTML markup, because it's a funny little markup language. Now that Wikipedia editing is so easy, we found the technical person is not needed anymore. So basically I get them in groups and I have each person identify someone who agrees to be their proofreader and someone who agrees to be their fact checker, and you tell them not to put anything substantial off until it's been seen by those two students and looked at by those two students. So you always have someone buffering it, someone to make sure that they got the verb tense right, they're not saying anything silly. And the fact checker is important because sometimes students will get the wrong references, wrong citations, or something that's inappropriate. So you may find, okay, you missed the big one, so have them just go do a Google search and PubMed search and look around and make sure the citations are solid. So that takes a lot of that risk out of there. So basically the rule is nothing substantial, they can change the grammar, they can change a comma if they want, but nothing substantial is going to be posted unless it's been seen by those other two students. And then I ask each person how their fact checker and how their proofreader was and assign some points for saying that they were good. And of course, then the other students also have to do it as well. So that, I think, is important to have that check so they don't go and do something too bad. I will explain the figure here in just a second. Okay, obviously something happened. But one thing is you have to watch out for students with poor social skills. So we all know that we have students sometimes, mild Asperger's, etc., who just have a problem interacting with people. And at first I was really afraid about putting them in the public. But then I realized, and actually this came through experience, that it's much safer for them to be writing on Wikipedia than it is probably to send them out on an internship. With Wikipedia, when they're writing on the articles, you can watch, you can intervene, you can jump into a conversation if you need to. And you can support these people in a much better way and much easier than it is for any other kind of authentic learning experience where they're dealing with the public. So you have to kind of take it, yes, you're taking a risk putting them out there. On the other hand, relative risk of putting them out online and sending them out in the world to some of these companies and shadowing positions and such. The relative risk is actually less with the online because you have the ability to monitor the situation very closely and jump in really quickly. So you can keep an eye on them. This is something I've noticed with every online assignment I've ever given. When I've done blog writing and communicating biology, the quality of the writing jumps. They're better. Students, they don't like to be embarrassed. It's terrible. I mean, they'll think, I sometimes get kind of sad that if they're writing an essay for me, they don't put in half the effort that they do if they know it's going to go online, but they don't care what I think. It's almost a letter grade. And I'd love someone to do a study on this. I don't know if there's any teaching literature on this, but it'd be really interesting to see. But I am convinced, my back. I am absolutely convinced that you get almost a good 10% bump in the quality of writing just by as soon as they know someone else is going to see it. This is another big one, outside feedback. And this is cool because I don't know if I was going to talk about this later, but you get, you aren't the only teacher now. So a lot of the burden comes off. I don't have to go and try to figure out every single topic because they may be getting postdocs and grad students from other universities coming in and straightening them out. You get people coming in and fixing them before I can get to them. All right, so you get this outside feedback coming in. And also, I think I'll talk about that a little bit more later when we get to the end. The other thing that surprised me was I was scared to death of trolls. So people coming in and making obnoxious comments and slamming people. And, there's some topics where, all the women, I've read of a class where all the women's posts got reverted and the men's didn't. This kind of, online can be really brutal at times. There's people who just go to extreme extents, or, to extremes. And one thing about science is we get kind of a pass. I mean, trolls want to entertain themselves. Who cares about ribonuclease 3? That's not the first website they're going to deface. I've had one case of a defaced website, and it was the guy who did the unicellular organism one. And he did this nice little section, put it up at the evening, and went, oh, this is great. Went to bed, got up the next morning, and it was reverted. Actually, all his work was deleted off the website, and there was one sentence there. Obama is a fish. Hence the figure. So he hit the revert key and put it all back. And reported it to Wikipedia, and they turned off the username, but the guy's just going to get another username and go again, right? But it was that's the worst we've had so far. I'm sort of bracing myself, and I warn the students, don't feed the trolls. If you get obnoxious comments, just you got to ignore it, because there's always going to be people trying to mess with people. And there's one topic this year I'm a little bit nervous about. We'll see if anything happens. Now here's the thing that I was worried about, and I think we're all kind of worried about what's going to happen on the course opinion survey, and they love it. I've had the most negative comment I've gotten on my course opinion survey was that I should do it in another class in communicating bio, which I think was a mistake. So I think it's really important to have it in this 4th year class. And here's why I think they love it. And I think we need to appreciate the fact that we're working in the internet is the student's comfort zone. It's not our comfort zone as instructors. We haven't really, most of us haven't, some of you out here may have grown up with it, but I'm old enough that I didn't grow up with it. All right, they are comfortable there. They're far more comfortable than I am there. All right, and so they're very well versed at dealing with people online. I'm convinced that we think that teenagers and 20-somethings are posting stuff they shouldn't be posting. It's not because they're doing it by accident. It's because they are exercising poor judgment. I'm convinced that they actually know exactly what they're doing, and they're very good at handling what they want their peer group to think about them, and they know how to manage their online presence. So I don't believe for a second that it's just sloppiness. But I think, I've made this comment before, that you see students running around, staring at their phones, and we sometimes think that means the whole world's all isolated in their own little world. And we need to recognize the fact, I think, that actually they're more connected than we are. They're sharing every aspect of their lives, and they're just keeping contact with people that we've long lost contact with. They are so connected, and they're used to it, and it's just trying to get that through our heads is really hard to appreciate. And I think the bottom line is that it puts them into they're comfortable with it. They're in a space they're comfortable with. So they know how to deal with it better than we do. The other thing down here, and this is where is that I think the students actually appreciate the contribution more than I do. This drives older academics insane, but the fact of the matter is, I think from most students' point of view, the most valuable educational resource of their academic career of an undergraduate is Wikipedia. That's where they go to start. That's where everybody goes to start. And they see that as an incredible resource, and they know why it has to be right, okay? And they know that they've been screwed by it when it's wrong, they've been helped when it's right, they're learning how to navigate it, but the one thing they all agree on is they've all used it, and they have all depended on it, it's bailed them out, so they haven't, they really, really value it, okay? So it's an important contribution. So the way I look at it is this contribution, this idea of contributing, is that since they see this as being the most valuable thing of their education that they've brought in, by writing on Wikipedia, I sort of look at it as sort of a rite of passage, in that they're making that step from taking all the stuff they learned and taking to actually giving back. So it's going over, and it's the same transition we want to make at graduation, right? We want our students to go from just learning about the world, improving themselves, to actually making that step to contribution. And this is where I try to point this out to them in this 4th year class, is that is the whole point of this last class, is to get them to go, this assignment, is to get them to move from taking to giving. And they feel it, because it is one of the most useful resources they have, and now they get to actually contribute and make it better. I mean, for my generation, it'd be like writing the Encyclopedia Britannica, where now instead of just I would never have been able my senior year to write an article for the Encyclopedia Britannica and get it published. They can, and they can go and look at it, and they'll start this whole snowball effect, and it'll be built upon later. And that is an opportunity that I think is really worth it, and an important lesson that they learn. So I think I will leave it there, although there was one other thing I was going to point out. I just realized I left one point out that I want to go back. Where was it? It was over here. This idea of why they like the assignment and being in their space, which is normally in a student-teacher relationship, you make an assignment and the student then responds. There's an imbalance of power there, right? Where the student wants to please you. When you're working online with an outside group, the whole balance shifts. It's all about truth now, and instead of being the student following a teacher, suddenly you end up having to collaborate because you have to deal with all the outside forces coming in. So it really shifts this power structure in a positive way. So you start working with the student, and you start looking at their page, and instead of thinking, no, I'm going to correct you, you just did this wrong, you're thinking, wow, how are we going to get this fixed so it's actually the best it can be? And it really does sort of go, levels the playing field. Suddenly truth matters, and you have all these external forces coming in, all these external voices coming in that sets you kind of in dealing, you become part of the conversation, I guess. So that was the one thing I was going to mention there, but I think I'll stop there after this terribly disorganization mistake there at the end. But okay, so I'm going to stop. All right.
Thank you. Do we have questions?
Yes.
I'm curious, do you have students coming into your course that already are editors on Wikipedia? And on the other end, do they continue after this course?
That is interesting. I'm going to go and see how many of them are. I've seen a couple go afterwards on their own page. As far as coming in, I haven't had one come in who's an editor yet. What's interesting is this has been this is nothing new. We've been hearing about it for like 10 years now, which is why Wikipedia has gotten so good at it. But I've not had any editors come in yet. My blog assignment, I've had people come in with blogs, but I've never had a Wikipedia editor come in yet, which kind of surprises me at times. But I'm hoping I'll be able to check. I can go back and check their username. So that's a good point. I'll go back and scan and see how many have continued.
I have a question about, and this is kind of just an information security question about giving students their feedback through email. Could you think of another way to deliver that? I just know that there's a lot of email account compromises.
Yeah, I wish I did, but we could do it face to face. But your problem is I'm looking at, when you start looking at 30 or 40 students going through, it's hard to find another way of doing that. We could do it through Moodle, I guess, would be probably more secure.
Is there a piece of the Wikipedia editing? No, it's all public. Everything is public.
Everything's
no
public.
Private spaces.
Right.
No
So it's not a private space where we could interact with each other, which is sort of that's part of it, because they want to be able to see the conversations, so you can't. So that's the problem. The only thing I noticed that is private is when students sign up for a username, you can put in your real name. So on my dashboard, if I'm logged in, I can see their real names. You couldn't see them there when the public's logged in. So that part is better. That's something that's an interesting. I'm going to point that out to the Wikipedia education people, see if they can set up some sort of private feedback systems. I think that's something that is definitely missing here. They need to have something that's FERPA-proof, that is a tight back and forth. I'll ask my Wikipedia person about it. See what she has to say.
Yeah, I've had students do presentations in class, and I have noticed their effort upscaling when they're having to do a presentation with all the students, or do a piece of writing that will be seen by fellow students. So I'm not at all surprised that your students' effort and the quality of their work jumped a little bit. I wanted to ask about the Wikipedia. Do they have like an educational level of style of writing that they're trying to hit?
I think the style is more just Wikipedia in general.
Okay.
So they're aiming for the encyclopedic, they're aiming for known knowledge, non-controversial, and it has to be unbiased. They have the criteria, those 5 pillars,
that they're aiming for.
I know a lot of instructional documentation and web writing, they're trying to aim for a certain reading skill level on a set scale. And so I was just curious about.
Yeah, I'll have to go back and look at the
But you're
training
right,
again. I
some
think they are. I think they do
programs-
try to make it for the general public, but
Yeah.
for a while there's some pages that are definitely not for the public. For stats pages for a while were a disaster. But one thing that does happen is there are robots that scan work all the time, so you'll get it looked at. And if you use even the wrong types of words, so if you use opinionated language, the robots pop. It'll pop on it. So there's like these little tripwires set up all over the place to sort of get you noticed. And that's one of the things. That doing citations wrong, which is almost impossible now because they have a cool little citation key. You can just click on the citation key, fill in a little box, and it puts it in, and then it puts everything in format. It's great. But there's they have these little trip things floating around. So if you do try to write it into, I think that's one reason students get caught by these a lot, is because their language isn't up a high enough level. They're writing the wrong style. So we tend to get a lot of warnings, telling us, oh, you aren't doing this right, and I have to calm them down a little bit. So because we tend to catch a lot of that, I've noticed.
The assignment that you're talking about, focuses, it seems, on improving, providing citations, adding content, that sort of thing. But you mentioned this kind of having to deal with other people editing or commenting or having these dialogues. I mean, how does that factor into your grading for this assignment? I mean, there's some very clear-cut, trying to do these contributions, but what if someone is overwhelmed by the amount of, responses and having to deal with a lot of people all of a sudden?
Yeah, you have to be careful about that. The big problem I've had with grading that section is I have a little block of 2 weeks where I tell them they can improve it. And then I give the final grade at the end. And then what I do is I watch. And if someone, my big fear is when you get someone who doesn't get anybody to interact with. So then I tell them, oh, go comment on someone else's pages in the class and see what happens. Then you start getting the conversations going back and forth. And so it is hard with the interactions. That's sort of you don't know that, you can't control that. So it's hard to keep things even there. So I do assign some points to encourage them. And mostly I think they're just trying to get their stuff to stick. They want to get it on there and get it to stay there. And to get it to stay there, you pretty much have to argue. You're going to have to tell somebody, and no, don't revert it. I actually know what I'm talking about, and then they'll put it back. Or someone will, come in with other citations. Or so far, mostly it's been more matters of form. Content itself, big problem we've run into with Wikipedia for a lot of my students is that when they write it, it's not the experts that they're running into having trouble with. It's the editors who aren't experts who are just watching a whole bunch of pages because they aren't sure what's going on. They see, okay, here's something poorly written in the wrong style, revert it. They just go through, and then if they expect you to come back and explain to them, no, we're doing this for a class, and yeah, this is right, and then they say, okay, well, we'll put it back. I did have one interesting one already this semester where someone got feedback and the person was a little bit sarcastic, the editor. And another editor chewed that editor out for being sarcastic. Then the first editor went back and responded and apologized to the student for being sarcastic before I even got a chance to see what was going on. So I mean, you're dealing with real people, which is something you have to kind of emphasize. I told the class about that. They thought that was pretty funny. I think they all went back to look at the conversation too to see what he said. But it was interesting.
Do they normally get reverted?
Yeah, it happens. A lot of stuff gets flipped back the first time. So it's just they will, beginners forget to sign their stuff with their 4 tildes, or they put the wrong format for the citations, which always sets up a warning flag, or just being poorly written seems to also catch attention. Or they'll say words like, anytime you say, any explicative, anything that's sort of flowery or overly supportive of something that sounds like it's an opinion, that seems to really draw attention to. And I don't know what kind of robot, there's obviously AI going. They have various bots running around checking you. You'll see you're checked by someone's this bot and this bot, and it's almost like Skynet out there.
Well, thank you so
Okay.
much for coming and speaking to us.
All right.